Hello, everyone, and happy Friday from HIPAA Vault. This is a new live stream, and today we are joined by Kevin Morensky. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how's it going?
And Gil Vidals. Hey, Gil.
Hey, Adam, we're ready to roll here.
Yeah, so thank you guys for joining us. Wanted to talk today a little bit about, so the general theme is what's at stake. And we've got a real world example to bring to you today, which is a latest release, and I'll share my screen shortly, but it's the latest release from the Office of Information Security InfoSec at HHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services, and it's a HC3 analyst note from November 6th, and it talks about a new ransomware that's been detected. Pull it up here. Can you guys see that? Zoom in a bit.
Yeah, I can see that clearly.
Yeah. So I'll run us through an overview of this, and I'll also include a link after the live stream, so you can access the PDF to take a look at it more. But yeah, so it's this document's produced by, as I said, the InfoSec at HHS. It's pertaining to a ransomware group called Black Suit, and they're associated with a more well-known outfit called Royal Ransomware family, and they've been identified as a credible threat to the healthcare and public health sector. So they operate internationally, but predominantly in the US, Canada, Brazil, and the UK. And the first threat from them was discovered in May 2023, and the latest attack was in October 2023, and that was against a US-based healthcare organization, not named here, whose servers and systems were encrypted with malware, tentatively identified as Black Suite. So it's also mentioned that one cybersecurity company documented at least 3 attacks involving the Black Suite encryptor with ransoms below $1 million. So 3 attacks with ransoms below $1 million. And another company annotated at least 5 attacks in manufacturing, business technology. So not only healthcare, but they have been targeting healthcare. So I think this is an interesting new development, because it's specifically, we don't often see healthcare being singled out, and this kind of bulletin is, I wouldn't say one of a kind, but I haven't seen too many of them this year, at least, where it's public and there's this much information. In terms of how the attack takes place, I mean, ransomware. Kevin, could you weigh in a little bit on that as a technical and programming expert? Give us a high level overview of what ransomware is, and how does it get into these systems?
Yeah, absolutely. Ransomware, broadly speaking, can be broken up into a couple different categories based on the type of attack that's occurring. For example, you might receive phishing emails, which are a common method that attackers use to introduce software onto your system that does a bad thing. In this particular case, it's encrypting all of your files. There's also the exploitation of vulnerabilities, whether those be unknown vulnerabilities in the case of 0 days, or known vulnerabilities that just haven't been patched because of poorly maintained infrastructure, or even targeted attacks. The healthcare industry in particular is susceptible to these types of attacks and to ransomware because of the type of data that they have, the amount of money that's associated with that data on the black market. Attackers highly prize healthcare data, financial data, and the healthcare industry has all of that in one place generally.
Yeah, it's like 5 to 10x the value of like a regular
Yep.
non-healthcare records, the value on the black market. So I guess it's profitable for them to target this sector. So we'll probably continue to see that. You mentioned email as being a vector there. I see also listed on this, and I'll pull it back up, is torrent websites,
Mm-hmm.
which for those not familiar is you go to a torrent website when you want to download some media or file that maybe you don't want to pay for, and they're notorious for uh, let's call it, the English phrase is being very dodgy, let's say. So yeah, torrent websites, the malicious ads as well, and then Trojans. Could you talk about the Trojans specifically, Kevin?
Absolutely. A Trojan, it's a piece of software that pretends to be something else in order to be introduced. It comes from the Trojan horse, the idea that something that looks like it might be safe, for example, a file that's named, picture.jpg.exe, you might automatically presume that that's safe because it looks like it's probably a picture. But when you double click it, it's going to install software that's potentially malicious. And that's the idea behind a Trojan horse. Gain access through someone's inability to see what it really is.
Yeah, Gil, what are your thoughts here on? Well, first of all, this specific release from HHS, and then maybe on what kind of remedies or let's say preventions. Obviously, prevention is better than cure. We typically recommend as a managed security service provider to, let's say, reduce the chance of your specific health organization being targeted and successfully targeted.
Sure, sure. One thing I want to say is curiosity is what killed the monkey, right? Everyone's familiar with that story about a monkey that is presented a jar where it's just big enough to get his hand in, but as he reaches in there to grab the shiny marble, he can't pull his hand out anymore because now he has a fist and he refuses to let go. And he ends up getting attacked by some tiger. It's kind of a funny story. But human nature, we're so curious. So there was an experiment done once where they took a bunch of USB drives and they scattered them in different parking lots. Like they just tossed them here. You'd be amazed at how many people took that sucker, that USB. And the first thing they do is they plug it into their laptop because they want to see what's on that thing. What information, maybe something secret. Meanwhile, it's this Trojan horse, like what Kevin talked about. It infects the system immediately and it takes over. It's a nightmare. Same thing with phishing attacks. You get an email that says, "Hey, Adam, if you click on this email, you might get 85% off of this coveted merchandise." You're like, "What merchandise? What? I got to check this out. I don't want to miss out." So unfortunately, as human beings, we're too much like these monkeys that are so curious. So we need to kind of force ourselves to put our curiosity aside and say, wait a minute, if I pick up this USB off the floor, I shouldn't just plug it in. Let me take it to my IT professional, or better yet, let me just throw it in the garbage. I don't need to really be that curious. And then phishing attacks happen so often through email, win the lottery and click this link and all this stuff. But we're so curious that it's hard for us to not click on it. And then that's where the infections come from. That's how they get in. And I think they're really playing on that weakness that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's also, there's definitely a certain amount of training within the organization that can be performed in order to increase the staff's awareness. But then there's also, I can talk personally. I haven't necessarily fallen for this, but I've been close to, where I'm just so busy and there'll be an email that is supposedly, it'll be coming from my boss and it'll be like, "Hey, I need you to whatever whatever, insert the request." There's a file and the boss is asking for some information and it's not actually from the boss. But maybe if I was super busy, or maybe if I just got off a call with the boss and it seemed, I don't know, it seemed like it was convenient, because these guys, like, I might fall for it because they're casting a really wide net ultimately, aren't they? They're like these ransomware groups. They're throwing out so many schemes, so many scenarios to hopefully, catch 0.0001% of whoever is these emails or these Trojans are being suggested to. So yeah, it's training, I guess, would be one point there, and then what can be done to kind of like reduce the chance that human error can occur in certain circumstances.
Well, one thing I want to say, and Kevin can chime in on this too, is these kinds of Trojans and these programs are primarily written for the most popular operating system, which is going to be Windows. So if your organization, let's say you decide to switch to the Google Chromebooks, which are locked down, or you decide to switch to Linux, which is a little bit harder because Linux has a higher learning curve. But let's say you switch to a Macintosh system or a Chromebook system. It doesn't solve everything, but it's not going to affect the system as readily as a Windows system. You stick the same USB into a Chromebook, and you don't get the same result because the Chromebook is locked down and it has more intelligence than just, oh, I'm supposed to copy a file, let me copy it. No, it'll throw an alert or it refuses to copy it or something. So I think if you have an organization, that's one thing I would do. If the organization I worked at and I was in charge of their compliance, and there's 10,000 employees or even 1,000, I would really seriously think about switching to something that's not nearly as vulnerable. Because your job is to try to pare down all the holes, all the vulnerabilities, and that might be one good way to do it. And by the way, if you switch to Chromebook, it's cheaper too. So it's not just, oh my gosh, I'm going to switch to this. How much is it going to cost me? It's actually cheaper than going out and buying a $1,500 laptop. It's a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing.
Both upfront and then also to maintain, right?
Mm-hmm. Plus, you have the administration dashboard where you can say, look, we're only going to allow these apps to be installed. You can't install everything you find under the sun. You can't go to Facebook. And, you have to force a certain password. I mean, there's all sorts of other benefits to having a seamless and a administrative dashboard that manages thousands of systems. And I think that's the place I would start anyway, because otherwise, you pull your hair out. All these people, it's hard to train people. I mean, we've tried, and we've done this where we send phishing test emails out, and even though we've trained, somebody still clicks on the dang thing.
Yeah.
It's just hard. It's you're not going to get it to be 100%, right? You're not going to get, oh, look, we train everybody. We're never going to have an issue. All you need is the new guy on the block, or out of 1,000 employees, just one guy. So what are the chances of you getting it so that nobody ever clicks on that? I mean, it's probably not going to happen.
And that's a false sense of security that a lot of people lull themselves into, especially if you have like an air-gapped system. You might become you might actually feel as if you're completely impenetrable. But, and I believe that was the case with Stuxnet, that was actually distributed by USB sticks. And then it was able to get through to an air-gapped network to wreak havoc on the PLCs, the programmable logic controllers running the centrifuges. And those were targeted zero-day attacks. So that kind of thing, it always comes back to, for me at least, the old adage that proper preparation prevents poor performance. Having a plan is what you need to be doing before anything else can come into a discussion. And the first step is to have a plan, especially if you have highly valuable and highly sought after data.
Yeah, that's a good thing you bring up, Kevin. I wish I could remember the saying I heard recently. It was in a book I read, but say if you have a great strategy, but you're lacking tactics, all you need is some time to implement those tactics and you'll be successful. But if all you have is tactics and no strategy, that is the default to lose. You're going to lose for sure if all you're doing is throwing random things up, trying all these little things, little training here and there. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You need a great strategy that will overcome the weaknesses in the organization.
Yeah, and I was just, I mean, the title of this live stream is "What's at Stake." HIPAA violations are expensive, And ultimately, the difference between, what you mentioned there, Gil, where maybe having an operating system that isn't as common and widespread might be the difference between, okay, a file being downloaded and a file actually being able to do any harm. So which in HIPAA terms could be the difference between an event or an incident and then escalate into a breach. So that can have a different cost. Like the ranges of HIPAA violations, they go from $100 to like 50,000 per violation per record. So yeah, there's a lot of money at stake, as well as the actual patient data and the loss of privacy there from that breach. So yeah, I think that's important to note. Okay, did we was there anything else that Kevin or Gil you wanted to cover? I think we went through the generals of this notification from HHS.
I don't have anything to add. I think it's a good topic. I think we should continue these kind of discussions in the future. Maybe get more tactical in terms of what could be implemented. Talk about strategy. We said how important strategy is. Well, what kind of strategy would work better? These attacks are just happening all too often. It's like the mass shootings you hear about. People just get numb to that. Oh, there's another mass shooting. Don't even read about it anymore, right? And the ransomware is the same. It's just happening at an alarming rate. So obviously, the security out there is just not enough, and it's not working. Clearly, that's a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's it for this live stream. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Kevin. Thanks Gil. And yeah, check out our YouTube channel for more content, and click subscribe if you like this content. And until next time, thank you for stopping by.